This happened 2 years ago during my sophomore year of college. It was the first semester and right in the middle of it. I had a pretty tough schedule and always had tons of homework to do. One night, I went to the study area in my dorm building, which was in the basement. I started my homework at like 7 p.m. and ended up staying there until almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I was able to finish all of my homework, but my roommate was asleep in our room and I was starving. There was a McDonald's right near campus, but it closed at midnight. I looked at my phone and what was open. I saw that there was a 24-hour McDonald's in the next city over, about a 10-minute drive away. I left the dorm and got into my car to drive there. I was so hungry and desperately wanted any kind of food to eat. When I got there, I pulled into the drive-thru and ordered a few burgers. After I got them, I just parked in the parking lot to eat them right there. I was so hungry that I couldn't wait. Plus, I couldn't go back to my dorm and eat them in my room because my roommate was sleeping and I didn't want to wake him up. It was just what I needed, and it really hit the spot. Right in the middle of my eating, though, I noticed that a car pulled into the parking lot and then parked right next to me. It looked to be a dark gray SUV. I also drove an SUV, but a smaller one. Of course, it's always strange when a car parks next to you in a parking lot that only has like 3 cars total in it. I couldn't see into the windows when I looked, because there was like a shirt draped over the passenger's side window from the inside. I just kept eating and honestly didn't think much of it at all. I heard a door from their car open and shut, and I figured they had gotten out to go inside. About 2 minutes later, I happened to glance up from my phone where I had been scrolling through Snapchat. I noticed something. There was some guy looking into the back window of my car. It startled me. My heart started beating really fast. I couldn't make out much details about the guy because of how dark it was. The guy then pressed his hands and face up against the window and then knocked on it with one of his hands. I had no idea what this guy was doing. Then he tried opening the swinging back door of my car. I was really creeped out now. My engine was still running, thankfully, and the doors were locked. The guy started going around to my front driver's door then. I wasted no time and I put my car into reverse and pulled out. When I did, I saw the guy starting to sprint over to his car. I sped up and got out of the parking lot as quickly as I could and then back onto the streets. I watched in my rearview mirror as the car started up and pulled out behind me. I tried, but before long the guy was on the road and right on my tail. It was basically just us on the quiet roads and nobody else was really out there at all. I drove down street after street with the car right behind me, copying every move that I made. He remained right on my tail, probably within 10 or 20 feet of my car the entire time. I didn't want to speed or do anything crazy, but at the same time, I really didn't know what to do. I couldn't just drive back to my dorm, or else the guy would know where I lived. I got within maybe a mile of campus, and then basically just started taking random turns. The car did each and every one of them with me. This went on in random neighborhoods and streets just off of campus for a good 10 minutes, I would say. Then I pulled onto a street where a police car happened to be driving down. As I approached the police car, I saw the guy behind me turn off onto another street and drive away. I thought about flagging down the police, but now that the guy was gone, I decided to just drive home. I kept going and very carefully drove back to campus after that. I made it back to my dorm safely and then went to bed. Luckily, I never saw the man or his car again. I've always wondered, though, what was he doing? When I had just graduated from high school, I worked at a McDonald's for the summer before college. My name is Jess, and this took place probably almost 10 years ago now. I was working one night, and it was probably like 10 or 11 o'clock. I got off a short time after that, and at that point, I'd been working there for maybe 2 months total. Things were really quiet, and had been for the past few hours. I was working in the drive-thru, and I'd been doing that a lot at the time. A car pulled in, which was the first one in at least 5 minutes. When they stopped at the intercom, I spoke and asked to take their order. There appeared to be a man driving, and instead of ordering, he just asked, "Is this Jess speaking?" It caught me off guard. Was this somebody that I knew? I didn't recognize him. How could he know my name? I paused before saying, "Why are you asking?" He responded by saying that he knew it was me and he recognized my voice. I asked the man if I knew him because I was 90% sure that I didn't. He responded by saying no, I didn't know him. I asked the man if he was going to order anything, and he paused, and then he said he would just see me later tonight, and then drove off. He sped through the rest of the drive-thru area after that. It was an extremely weird thing to happen, and I hoped that the man was just joking. I worked for maybe only 30 minutes or so after that, and then I was off for the night. I lived at my parents' house back then, which was about a little under a 10-minute drive from the McDonald's that I worked at. Afterwards, I drove home. My neighborhood was pretty typical, but when I pulled onto my street, I drove down to my house, which was the fifth one down from the end. I saw a car parked out right in front of my driveway, but to the side between my house and my neighbor's. I had never seen it before. My heart started to race. I realized that it was the same car that had been in the drive-thru. I guessed this guy was serious when he said he would see me later. But who was he, and how did he know where I lived? I pulled into my driveway, which is something that I instantly regretted. I saw the car start, and then begin going into reverse. It parked so that it was completely blocking me in my driveway. I got out of the car right then and there, and sprinted for the front door of my house. When I got there, it was locked. I started banging on it and trying to open it frantically. My keys were somewhere in my pockets, and I guess I was just so panicked that I didn't think to grab them. After probably 10 seconds, which felt like an hour, my mom opened up the door. I got inside, slammed the door shut, and then locked it. Then I explained to my parents what had happened. We looked outside, and the car was still there. My dad then took a step outside. I'm not sure if he was going to confront the man, or just get a better look, but as soon as he did, the car sped off. It didn't come back that night, and the next day, I told my manager at McDonald's about it. Unfortunately, there's not really much anybody could do. The problem was, the car the guy drove was really typical, just a black four-door sedan, and looked maybe 5 to 10 years old or so. I'm not even sure what make it was. I personally don't think I ever encountered the guy again, and luckily, I didn't work at the McDonald's much longer after that. Like most people, I've been to McDonald's probably over 100 times. Last year, I lived in an apartment building that was within a walking distance of a McDonald's. It was right down the street and then across another one. It took maybe 10 minutes at most for me to get there, and I took advantage of this several times on late nights when I was really hungry. One night, a few months ago, it was really late, but I was starving. I think it was a Friday night, and I had been out late. I got back home, but wasn't really that tired. However, I was starving. I walked over to the McDonald's and then went inside and ordered on the touchscreen that they had. Nobody else was in there at this hour, and when I got my food, I took the bag and left to walk back to my house. This McDonald's had the back parking lot up against a wooded area. It was kind of on the edge of the shopping area, and then it led to a more residential area, which is where my apartment was. There was a long sidewalk that went along the side of it, and I would walk that and then cross the street. As I was walking down the sidewalk all by myself, I soon started to hear footsteps behind me. They were maybe 100 feet back, so pretty far. I'm not sure why, but I looked behind me. Maybe it was because of how quiet things were. There were really no cars on the road, and nobody else was out walking for sure. When I looked though, I saw a man dressed as Ronald McDonald, the full suit and everything. It wasn't Halloween time either, so this was super strange. Why was there some guy dressed as Ronald McDonald at 1 o'clock in the morning? He was walking behind me on the path, as if he had just emerged from the woods or something. Eventually, I crossed the street. I didn't expect Ronald McDonald to cross as well, but he did. He was still pretty far behind me, but the longer I walked and he remained behind me, the more nervous I felt. Eventually, I made it back to my apartment complex. The guy was still following me, and still about the same distance behind. The way he was walking was sort of creepy too. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but it wasn't just an average walk. It was sort of slow and robotic almost. I was in a hurry now to get inside, and I got to my apartment building and went in. I got up to my unit, which was on the 4th floor, and went inside. I felt so much better to be off the streets with that weirdo. I wasn't really sure where he ended up going, because I hadn't cared to look behind me. I went into my bedroom in my apartment and looked outside. When I did, I saw the Ronald McDonald guy standing in the parking lot, staring right up at my window at me. He was expressionless and didn't move. I was super creeped out by this now. I closed the blinds to my window and then closed the blinds to every other window that I had. I did my best to ignore the whole situation after that, and the next day, he was gone. I'm not sure who the guy was or why he followed me, and looking back, that was a super creepy thing for the guy to do, whoever he was.